Good afternoon, we are now live. Enjoy the session.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a new session organized by the FTTH Council Europe, titled Streamlining the Planning and Operations Fiber Lifecycle, Deutsche Glasfaser Case Study. This session is sponsored by our partner IQGeo. And before I present more in detail the speaker for today and the content of the session, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping items, starting with a very brief presentation of the FTTH Council Europe for those who are not familiar with the organization. So we are a European industry association founded in 2004. Our mission is the promotion of full fiber network throughout Europe and the adoption of full fiber network. We have 165 member companies as we speak now. Among them are different categories of stakeholders like vendor, operator, investors. As a matter of fact, today we have a representative of the vendor community with IQGeo, member of the FTTH Council. And we are talking about a situation involving directly another member, operator this time, Deutsche Glasfaser, one of the leading fiber operator in Germany. So what we do as an organization is we produce report, we develop market research, technology information. We share that with the entire ecosystem. We advocate for the mission of the association towards policymakers and especially the European Commission. We organize events. We have the FTTH conference as a flagship event, which very recently took place in Berlin. And we have also this series of online events, which are also a different way and complementary way to socialize and educate our audience about what needs to be done to roll out efficiently full fiber network throughout Europe. So if we go to the next slide, this webinar is part of a series. We have one webinar every month approximately, and we really want to make sure that we can bring very high quality content to all of the audience. Couple of very practical things. The session is recorded, and we are going to send to all registrants, so those who can be live with us now, but also those who registered and would like to listen to the replay, to watch the replay. A link to that replay will be sent within a couple of days, as well as a copy of the deck, which is used by our presenter. You can ask questions simply by using the question section in the control panel, which should appear on your desk, on your screen. So whenever you have any question, please use that to ask the question. We will moderate the question, and we have reserved some times at the end of the session to take this question. So don't hesitate to ask questions to the speaker. I'm sure they'll be very happy to address them. Now, moving to the introduction of the session. This is all about how technology, software, and intelligence can help facilitate network deployment. More specifically, how Deutsche Glasfaser is using some of these solutions to have a more efficient documenting of the fiber network in real time, automate and capture as built in the field, and validate network performance proactively, and finally managing and accelerating contract processes. So all these very operational tasks can be facilitated by some solution which will be described in this presentation, with three knowledgeable speakers as presented on this slide from left to right. Jakub Kwiatkowski, who is head of passive network high level at Deutsche Glasfaser. Christian Wirth, head of passive network architecture at Deutsche Glasfaser, and Anthony Nasser, customer success manager at IQGeo. So thanks all of you for sharing your knowledge and your experience with our audience. And without further ado, I would like to transition to our first speaker. Anthony, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience. I am happy to be presenting today on behalf of IQGeo in partnership with the Council and Deutsche Glasfaser, our joint use case on how you can streamline the planning and operations of the fiber lifecycle. Before we start, I would like to give a short introduction on IQGeo to our audience, specifically for those who are not familiar with us. Our vision essentially is to empower operators and firms, companies, engineering services companies in the telecom and utilities industries to build better networks. With the innovative products we offer, a truly single source of truth on one platform, we can cover the whole life cycle, starting from planning, building, to eventually selling services and operating the network. In numbers, we are proud to serve more than 450 customers with more than 150,000 users across our portfolio of products, and with more than 200 staff in 8 offices across the globe. Our global network of experts is always trying to find innovative ways towards building better networks. Quickly going through the agenda for our webinar today, our speakers from Deutsche Glasfaser, Jakob and Christian, have prepared some very interesting insights to share with us today. In terms of engagement, as IQGeo and Deutsche Glasfaser, we have been in collaboration since 2022 with our aim to support Deutsche Glasfaser to implement their ambitious fiber lifecycle plans. So in addition to the overview that Deutsche Glasfaser will present through Jakob and Christian, we will also be doing some quick and short demonstrations of a network manager telecom. And at the end, of course, like any webinar sessions, we will have a Q&A session. When we talk about the life cycle of a network, we have different vantage points to consider. So starting from the plan and design stage, the drive is to, as much as possible, design the network once. That, of course, would require going through the process of high-level designs and low-level designs to ensure optimal results. And essentially, that is a network that can be built as effectively as possible. Transitioning to the construction stage, having predictable rollouts in collaboration with contractors will ensure a speedy and efficient build, and most importantly, an accurate documentation of the network that was built. This will eventually enable the network built to perform its main purpose, which is to provide services to clients and customers, and in this way, maximizing the revenue, which is key to operators. And last, and most definitely not the least, operations and maintenance are essential to keeping clients happy and benefiting from the benefits of digital equity. So for all those pillars, we at IQGeo have Network Manager Telecom. And with that short introduction, I will pass it on to Jakob and Christian to take us through their presentation.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So I will take over. Well, welcome to my bat cave, where I try to save the FTTH world. Maybe one sentence to me. I'm 36 years old, started with Deutsche Glasfaser in 2017 as a planning engineer, and meanwhile responsible for the creation of all high-level designs for Germany. So a few words about Deutsche Glasfaser to keep it short. Our main approach is still, and main aim is still, rural Germany, which has still worse bandwidth than urban areas, of course. We have the investors, and we used the time the last years to grow greatly, and we build up partnerships to speed up fiber networks as fast as possible. And we want to be a pioneer still in digitalization. And I guess we kicked it off really good, the movement to really getting fiber to the homes. We will share 3 main simple steps in how we want to provide FTTH for everyone. So plan, build, and operate. We will want to explain that. And maybe you know the House of Cards, you know the House of the Dragon. So we felt free to also create the House of Planning, build, and operation to make it more approachable. And yeah, I would maybe start with the 4 pillars I would define for the House of Planning. It's mainly area analysis, it's mobile mapping, high-level design, and validation and transfer, and also the low-level design. When we want to explain what is HLD and LLD, it's kind of more or less on the high level, the detail grade, and also a really detailed network plan as an LLD. But to build a house, a good foundation is needed. And so we work with IQGeo and Comsoft as a good, effective system landscape. And our main vision for this part is 100% accuracy. So maybe one or another is asking, well, isn't that possible? Yeah, it may be possible, but through the process, a lot of stuff can happen. You have difficulties, adjustments in the network or other parts what hinder you in getting the accuracy. And maybe also the lack of digitalization in Germany is also maybe one point. But we operators do a lot to improve that where we possibly can. So what would we start with? Area analysis. What is useful to take a look into? Here you see a few example pictures. It could be, for example, soil classes. Soil classes define the underground. And when we use, for example, horizontal drillings, it's really important to know and to face the soil classes, because that can give a big idea of how the costs could be. Also important, like natural and water or similar reserve areas, which can cause higher costs. And why are we doing that? That's easy, fast knowledge about cost risks and obstacles. So we have a first rough idea, do we want to go into that region or not? Mobile mapping. So with our 12 cars, we are doing or creating a lot of terabits of data, or terabytes. So yeah, when you drive around 6,000 kilometers, the disk is full pretty fast. So and maybe if someone heard the word digital twins, so we can create with that data a digital twin to gain precision in our network costs. For example, the knowledge about the surfaces, you can see an example picture, can give around an idea of 80% of the costs of deploying a network. So really big amount to already have a picture of. And you can also use the data to build up artificial intelligence, recognizing all this and even more, like, let's say, gas line locations, sewers, and other obstacles, which help to determine more and more extra costs. Why? Well, digital twins, possibilities to take all needed field data into consideration without going there several times in the process chain. High-level design. So now we start using that data. So we want to have also the idea of the, let's call it material list, like bill of material. How much material do we need also for the network? So one aspect was the civil works. Now we go into detail. And I learned about different ways of processing HLDs. And in the past, and my personal choice is really doing it automatized in-house. And so we have, like I mentioned, the foundation with Comsoft and IQGeo. With a good software, you can set the rules how you want it in a modular way. You can scale your output efficiently and gain speed with that based on your goals. But you still have the possibility to try several versions if you need of a network. So that's a lot of might you can get here. Lots of manual work is not needed anymore. And the better the input data, referring to mobile mapping, the better the quality of the design. So why high-level design? Automated way to use collected data as input and generate a really good first estimation of the price for a project. Going to the last part, validation and transfer. While going into direction rollout, we implement last details to the design, which were not necessary in the early status. And to keep it simple, we can use ComSoft and IQGeo to transfer the data quite seamless. And that is also a big advantage, not to work with several interfaces between several systems. We can add here field data like third-party infrastructure, making last checks, and finally create the bill of material or quantity. That's nothing more than, let's say, the ingredients for the FTTH network. So why validating? Having a last checkpoint for quality and adding details is necessary. So I hope I explained the first house of planning relatively okay. So I would hand over now to my highly esteemed colleague, Christian, who will explain the next part of it. And of course, feel free meanwhile to already put in your questions if you have a few.
Yes, thank you very much, Jakob. We are working nearly hand in hand, always to have the optimal solution for digitalization in Germany. And by having a good plan, which Jakob showed, we have to deploy it. And the way we want to deploy it in Deutsche Glasfaser has completely changed in the last years. Our vision is to have a precise civil work with lots of standards. Yeah, the mission is to have a cost and quality transparent network built. We have 4 pillars in here. Jakob mentioned that we will have the ability to have a BOQ and a BOM. Yeah, we know which quantities of civil works do we need in detail. Yeah, where and how many, and we do also know it on material. And that's a main important aspect. It's a big benefit out of IQGeo, which we are using right now. Yeah, we have a passive material database, which will be shown by Anthony afterwards. What describes not only, okay, you have, for example, a 96 fiber cable, which Jakob is planning. No, we also have the cost for having the calculation on how much does it cost to have the network rolled out. And we will have also some things like the data sheets, how to handle it, installation manuals for our contractors directly linked in this tool. And we have the attenuation values, which shows you what is the whole attenuation between your active POP, for example, and the customer, to have a look, does the technology you want to provide on this network, does it fit? Yeah. And with the data you have of this material database, you are able to operate it afterwards to do automatically tests, because it's evaluated. You know the whole distance, you know each material, and you know what should be the result when the contractor is doing his tests. Yeah. We change it to order in BOM and BOQ, what gives us the possibility to have several partners. Yeah. To have a partner, for example, for civil works, another partner for constructing some sites, to bring the material on our own, maybe the whole material or only parts. We have a base instead of having one plan and have a project contract, like we call it like that. As an enabler, we have a master service agreement, which has all the quantities, all the materials contracted with several contractors, and we can place orders for the projects based on that and come in an interaction with the contractor. He can give us the documentation out of the tools. Yeah, we don't need to have some extra employees at our general contractor going on site doing the documentation. It can be done by the people on site with a tablet. Yeah, and they have a kind of KI-based checks, validation, acceptance checks for Deutsche Glasfaser, which makes it very, very easy for the general contractor and Deutsche Glasfaser. And we save a lot of capacity of people to do on-site reviews or reviews of some documentation which has been handed over. We have several rules for our network concepts. For example, in Germany, you have state aid projects for open access. Then we have B2B customers, B2C customers. There are mobile sites. With all these planning rules, Jakob is able to plan together with his teams the perfect solution, and they can validate, will it fit to technology requirements, yes or no? And when there is a small adjustment, for example, in the low-level design phase, the municipality asks you to go on the other side of the street, you can change it live in the system, and you don't have to change it manually. You change it live in the system and can interact with your contractor directly. That's a real benefit as well. That gives us a very good base of documentation after having all these acceptance tests to go to the house of network operations. In network operations, when you have your documentation of the network, you have all the values how the network should look like. You have your acceptance test and the optical test patterns, which Deutsche Glasfaser is rolling out right now, to have a live view on each fiber, yeah, to have all the values available. You see the life cycle of the cables. You see the life cycle of all the connections you have in your network. And you're able, together with this data, to check for new technologies. For example, when a transformation is coming, in the past there was GPON, right now there's XGS-PON, maybe next is 50G-PON. You have a database which gives you the correct information on what is feasible in this network. Yeah? And so you can continuously improve your network, and you can build it very modular. Again, state a maybe B2B with point-to-point solutions, mobile sites. You can build it very modular, and you have it end-to-end planned, documented, and it's the base for operations within one tool. Main enabler is the database of the material for us, yeah, and as well all the acceptance checks which we have in here. Jakob, which lessons have we learned during the introduction of all those fancy things?
Yeah, maybe we picked 4 of, I guess there are much more, but 4 what we think are very important. Maybe let's start with a single source of truth. So what we have learned is you can do stuff with a lot of systems and it can work, of course, but what can always be hard to track is keeping data on one point. So it is a good advice to look for systems or software tools where to save the data, and better to work with interfaces to just show it into other areas of the company. For example, I give you an example for state-aid projects. It may be that you have to add addresses, it may be that you have to cut them out again, and so you have several versions of a design. So single source of truth really helps to gain transparency, to not work with the wrong data, and that is one aspect we would say as a lessons learned what you should try to set up. So maybe Christian can say something about communication. Oh, that is the wrong stone, but okay.
Yeah, but I can also say something about communication. Yeah, what is very important is to have a good setting of information. Yeah, there is a main important thing is to have a good information workflow. It's hard to maintain production while developing many systems. Yeah, that's very important to communicate early, to have a good plan, to have a workflow for the developing and afterwards releasing the new systems and processes.
Yeah, so well, I will take the brick piloting. Piloting can be really crucial to also gaining the experience you do also out of the field. So on paper, everything can work totally fine, but then you go outside and really see issues you have never seen before. So field knowledge is really a good part also to have early feedback and to reapply it into the new process. And like also mentioned with single source of truth, a slim system landscape can help to have less interfaces, to be more effective. Accessibility for third party like contractors can be managed better. A simple process chain and less translation steps that really helps. We call it like an end-to-end solution. It really helps to have an overview of what you are doing. And yeah, it costs time, of course, to apply that, because now in the last years a lot happened and we get a lot of softwares and developers what are providing that. So and maybe more benefits could be no manual reviews of construction results. Like we said, the mobile mapping, you don't have to go there several times. So like no additional site visits. And documentation is really important part of project acceptance and payment processes. Process improvements by real-time availability within the IT landscape. Benefit for state aid project, like mentioned, there's a high degree of quality needed, and accurate, like Christian said, documentation for really establishing homes connected. And I don't know if Christian, maybe you have 1 or 2 points more, but
so at the end, to have the documentation in the right way is very important, because everything what happens in the ground, what's laying in the ground, is the main asset of Deutsche Glasfaser. Yeah, and it's not only about operating the network; it's also a kind of space for our sales guys. Yeah, it's the base for sales to have a view on our available capacity. And in addition to that, it's very simple for Jakob and team to plan or to give calculations for inquiries beyond our inventory. Yeah, that's very, very simple. It's our main asset. So it is very important to have it documented in the right way and to have a view on how you can handle it.
Yeah, and a clear contract design leads to clarity for all contractual partners. Like we mentioned, the MSA, that helps a lot to speed up the FTTH rollout in Germany. So I hope we could give you a nice insight of how we are approaching this topic. Thanks for listening. Feel free to ask questions. Now we go back to Anthony, and if I read the questions, why on earth is that dude having yellow pillows in his back? I like the color. It makes it, from acoustic perspective, nice. So and it feels cozy. So feel free to ask technical questions. And Anthony, feel free to continue.
While Anthony is getting ready, please continue to ask questions to the panel. We already have 5 or 6 of them, but we can take more. So before Anthony finishes, we will have enough time to take many questions and engage in a conversation with you. So don't hesitate to ask more questions. Thank you. Anthony? Anthony, the floor is yours.
Okay, I was having technical difficulties with the mute button. Apologies for that. So thank you, Jakob and Christian, for your shared presentation. What I learned is definitely without solid building blocks, any house would certainly collapse. So we've seen with Deutsche Glasfaser how Network Manager Telecom is being used as an enabler to streamline and optimize processes and activities. And this is essentially using the ability to model anything. We leverage automation and intuitive tools to manage the network lifecycle dynamically. Now, without too much to add into that, I will transition to the demos that we have prepared for you today. So taking the 3 stages from Deutsche Glasfaser lifecycle, the plan, build, and operate, we will see how we can essentially optimize design scenarios, can streamline, build documentation, and resolve incidents in a rapid fashion. So I will switch to my demo screen. And you should be seeing my Network Manager Telecom view. So this is essentially our inventory system, our documentation system that we offer to operators. And what I will be presenting through the first demo is a view on how you can potentially optimize designs and design scenarios. So what we're looking at is a selected area, a design area, and this is represented as a design object in Network Manager Telecom. Within this design object, we are able to create local versions of the design by taking a copy of the master dataset, and through that copy, planning and building a new FTTH network through the automation that is provided by the Comso Fiber engine. So in this example, I will open up my design. I have prepared 2 workspaces within that design. And the indication of that is you are able to pull the data sets from your master and create multiple designs to streamline the ability to compare these different architectures or these different deployment methods, for example, using the automation in Comso Fiber. So selecting one of these architectures, I am able to open up my design, and you can see my screen is populating with the actual design elements. So in this specific area, I have a point of presence that is essentially providing connectivity to the rest of the network through a certain type of architecture, underground, with trenching, with fiber cable that are directly providing connectivity to end customers. So in addition to the automation that will create that design for you, you are able to, as Jakob and Christian mentioned, you are able to generate automatically a bill of material. So with that bill of material, you can see how your design will actually be built in terms of actual costs for deployment, actual costs for activation. So all of these are generated automatically through the engine, and you can consume them to understand how that design will be broken down. So this is an overview of how that bill of material can look like, with a summary giving you the total cost of the project, and with a deep dive into how that project is being built, all the different materials that will be used, from ducts to cables to splice closures, manholes, handholds, etc., up until activating customers with CPEs or equipment, MDU equipment, etc. So now going back to Network Manager Telecom, this is one version of a design that could be planned to provide service for this specific area, but we can certainly look and compare against a different version. So if I open my second architecture or second example, you can see that I have a different design. Starting from the same point of presence, you have different clustering techniques that were used, different equipment that were used, and this will eventually, of course, lead to a different bill of material that is generated. And you can, again, download the bill of material and inspect what is the new cost to deploy that new network based on the new architecture or based on the change of the rules that you've done. So you can easily, with multiple iterations, look at different scenarios, look at how your plan and design phase will impact the actual build phase, and give all that intelligence to the construction crews so they know what to expect. You know what your contractors will be building and during or using what kind of capital they would need to use to deploy and build that network. So going back to Network Manager Telecom, what is enabling the designer or the planner to use this functionality is the ComSoft Fiber Engine. And the ComSoft Fiber Engine will typically take input data, and in this case, the input data is being read directly from Network Manager Telecom. We're reading the addresses that we want to connect to. We're reading the potential streets that we can trench into. And from those data sets, we're automatically creating the needed data sets for the calculation. So I can quickly switch to how this would look like from an input perspective. So you see we have the buildings, we have the addresses, we have the possible trenches that were generated automatically by ComSoft to drive that automation. So this is the first quick demo of how you can streamline planning and designing. We'll transition now to how you can efficiently document your network. So I will switch to a different view of Network Manager Telecom. And this is my mobile view. So whenever you have a connected device, if you log into the software using your credentials as a field user or as a desktop user, as long as you're connected, you have the same interface, you have the same functionality available to you. So this enables the field crews, whether they're doing construction work, operation, or maintenance work, it enables those crews to know exactly what is being built or exactly what needs to be maintained. So in this quick scenario, we'll see how you can leverage the functionalities in Network Manager Telecom to do field work and seamlessly let that field work be available to users in a desktop environment or supervisors in a desktop environment. So in this simple scenario, we have again a design object, and in this design object, which is representing an area to be built, you can see I have objects that represent, in this case, a manhole. I can look at this manhole. I can, again, on my mobile device, I can see how connectivity is created in this specific manhole. I can pull up seamlessly reports, connectivity reports, circuit reports that showcase to me what needs to be built exactly, how splicing should be done, which strands from which cables will be spliced to which strands from which cables again. So all of this seamlessly is available through the interface. Now, in addition to that, while you're doing construction, we said it's very evidently important that you are able to document the network as accurately as possible. And we know for a fact that construction work will have deviations from the actual plans and the actual builds or to build plans. This is the reality of deploying networks. So it should be simple to capture these red lines or capture the reality of the network that is built. So looking at the markup palettes, for example, which are tools that are available through our interface, as a field user, you are able to not only document what was built, but also propose or even change the actual objects that were built in the ground and reflect that back in the office. So using the tools that we have, you can create, first of all, we're documenting that we've created or we've established this manhole in the field. We've created the connectivity required in this specific manhole. So we have a closure, and within that closure, we have multiple cables that are incoming and outgoing, and we're splicing them. So we can create that markup, we can add it, we can attach it. And in addition, let's say if you have a case where the actual route or the actual trench that was supposed to be trenched in this specific route has to be changed. So you can create a corresponding line or a markup line for it in the field using the path that was actually built. So by creating this path, this is the path that was actually built for the object. And this is already related to the route that you have, that you had as a plan. Now, what would this trigger? This will trigger the desktop user to go and inspect what was actually built and make and adopt these changes accordingly. We have multiple other options for markups, but this is typically what happens when you do redlining. So with that, I will switch to the last quick demo for the session today, which is operating the network and rapidly resolving incidents during the operations. So I will switch to a different area where we have some established networks, some established connectivity for users. So we stressed on the importance of having the documentation of the network, and the accuracy of this documentation will trigger the operations to be as seamless as possible. So whenever you have incidents with customers complaining, for example, that they have loss of connectivity or for any other reasons, you can immediately inspect and know where exactly that incident is happening in your network and how you should be able to handle it and fix it. So the Deutsche Glasfaser team talked about having optical test heads, or even if we're not relying on optical test heads, if you go to the field and do OTDR traces to know where you have drops in power for an optical signal, then you can seamlessly go back to Network Manager Telecom and get that full trace and full connectivity and give that knowledge to the technicians on where they should go to repair that potential issue. So very quickly, suppose I have the following customer, which is connected through the ONT with one fiber strand. You can see I have a circuit, and that circuit represents, of course, what is the service that is being currently given to that specific customer. And you can look at that circuit from where it starts. Of course, this is the OLT in this case, which specific port, and where it terminates on which specific port in the ONT. Now, suppose that we have received a complaint from this customer that there are issues with its connectivity. So in order to know how we can locate the issue, whether with the optical test head or with OTDR traces, assuming we are able to know that we have a drop in power 128 meters, for example, from the customer, we can seamlessly use this OTDR trace tool in both directions, whether upstream or downstream, to locate the potential location where the fault has occurred. And looking at this location, we see potentially that we might have an issue in a manhole or in the fiber cable that is incoming to this manhole. So we can know by selecting, again, this is through the mobile interface, by looking at the connectivity report or the circuit report from this manhole, what other potential customers might be affected by this issue. So specifically, if it's a fiber cut in a fiber cable, you already, because you have documented the network properly, because you know how your services are running against each customer, you are able to know which potential customers are affected by these issues. So by pulling a connectivity report or by pulling a circuit report as well, you can know which of your customers have been impacted even before potentially them raising the flag. So this will make it easier for the technician on the ground to know what needs to happen to resolve that fault. So again, pulling the connectivity report, they can fix the connectivity issue by resplicing and to an active fiber and reproviding connectivity to your customer. So with that, I will switch back to the PowerPoint presentation. This was quickly an overview of how you can streamline and optimize how you plan, how you build, and how you operate your network with Network Manager Telecom. So with that, I thank you, first of all, on behalf of myself and on behalf of Jakob and Christian for listening to us. And we can now transition to the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you to Christian and Jakob. I think that has been very, very rich and concrete and practical. And not surprisingly, we received tons of questions, so I don't think we'll be able to address all of them. But what I can say to our audience is that all questions will be forwarded to the participant of this session or the presenter of this session, and maybe some of them can be followed up offline to make sure everybody is receiving an answer. So let me kick off with the first question I have on the list here from Karina. When selecting material for the fiber network infrastructure, what criteria does Deutsche Glasfaser consider? And what specific tests or evaluations are conducted to ensure the durability, performance, and longevity of the chosen material under varying environmental conditions? So it's a long question, but I think, I don't know, Jakob or Christian, how do you address this?
I guess Christian would be the right one to answer, I guess.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, Deutsche Glasfaser is there again a bit more professional than in the past. We have our own Excellence Lab Center, which is working in several Dean workshops, and we are working together to fulfill all the international standards. Yeah, and we do testings of the material at the vendor sites. Yeah, we do quality checks and we do site audits at all of our partners.
Okay, very good. Now another question. What about connection to database of existing duct infrastructure? So how do you bridge with existing database concerning infrastructure? Maybe Anthony or whoever wants to take this one.
Well, I can tell a bit about maybe how the situation in Germany is. And that is also something what I mentioned a bit. The situation in Germany is that it's hard to get, in general, third-party infrastructure data. So it can be that you get data kind in PDF format, you can get shapefiles, you can get a drawing, you can get something in Paint. So what is really lacking, let's say, is the digitalization on all this data. So what did Germany do in the past? They built up the ISA. It's kind of a central portal where normally all that information should be visible. But of course, it's really hard to get all those information, what is more or less controlled and held in the past by the municipalities. And you have a lot of regional players. And to fit that really in one a central database is really hard. So that means that we really have to ask for relevant data. For example, when we talk with the municipalities and the mayors, hey, do you have something we could use as existing infrastructure for the fiber rollout, but also third party like current, sewers, water, gas, and what's so on is also relatively difficult to handle from my perspective. So that's hard to apply that data in the front of the process. It makes sense to make it later be where you are really sure that a rollout, for example, is taking place. But it's a fight to get that information in a good way.
Yeah, understood. Another question, maybe also to Deutsche Glasfaser. Could you describe on high level the tools suite you are using in addition to the IQGeo and ComSoft series of software, and maybe how do you combine all of these?
In a few sentences, I guess we have seen that ComSoft and IQGeo, for example, are packaging the infrastructural topic, let's call it like that, the geoinformation and doing the networks and saving that data. So what would you need to, on the other hand, it's kind of a managing tool. So I don't know if I can call it right here now, but you have to pair, in my opinion, a project management system which has interfaces with all that data. And it's also the same question and answer what I gave already. Keeping it simple. Use the project lifecycle management software to really read out the information out of the database and only manage different tasks per project. This is reliant on that task. When you move that one time-wise, then it also have an impact on the task 2 and also move that around. So I would say a good combination is tooling for setting up the geographical way, and one tool to really manage all around that on the project view.
Okay. There's a practical question on the system. Does the system facilitate taking or recording photographs to evidence task completion?
Yes, I can take that question, Vincent. Yes, so essentially taking photos to evidence the build is possible through attribution, through uploading these photos as part of the elements or the objects that were built, whether we're talking trenching in the field or laying or blowing microducts, pulling fiber or blowing fiber, etc. The actual cabinets, how they're built and how they're connected, the internals of the cabinet. So all of these can be uploaded through each specific object. And you can also use other tools. We integrate with other tools, for example, to enhance that capturing process.
Okay, very good. Tivada is thanking you for the very detailed presentation. Question about calculating the cost of a network design. How do you calculate the cost of terminals, cabinets? Do you have a set of products that the software work with?
Mm-hmm. So typically this is through the automation engine, ComSoft Fiber. When we talk about automating the design of a network, it not only automates the drawing, let's say the civil aspect of it, but also the connectivity that is created within each specific equipment, including cabinets. So this will entail talking about what are the components that would be needed in a specific cabinet with their specific cost, supply and install costs that are configurable as part of the configuration of ComSoft Fiber. So you can, as much as possible, enrich the bill of material or bill of quantity that you generate by enriching those supply and install costs into the rules that drive the automation.
Okay. An interesting question, more in terms of operational process. How long did it take to the installation and integration of the IQGeo application into the Deutsche Glasfaser landscape? So how how long does it take to integrate the entire system into your own processes and IT system, I guess?
Well, good question. I guess what the difficulty is in that topic, a lot of companies, meanwhile, in the last years, like also providing end-to-end products, but you have always the individual touch of each operator. So you can't. I think that it's not possible to have a software min-maxed for everyone, and it works like fluently. So yeah, it costs a lot of time to implement the software because you have an old workflow. You want to have a new workflow, so you have to really take a look on transfer that in a good way. So, for example, when you have several systems in the past, having geographical data, you have to think about the migration of all their data and making, let's say, a mapping of every item, like we mentioned, for the bill of materials, for example. And to really build that up, it can cost a lot of time. So at least that is my feeling. I don't know, Christian, if you have other thoughts, but it's not from today to tomorrow. I guess you are muted, maybe.
Sorry, yeah, at the end we didn't change only the software. Yeah, we changed a lots of things. We are in a big transformation program right now. We changed the software, we changed all the workflows and tools behind, yeah, and we changed the concepts. We are rolling out our network to a professional network with high standardization, yeah, and a unique planning rule set for each of the several departments like state aid, B2B, FTTS, and it was quite an enabler, yeah, to use this software. And doing it in this transformation process, it's not fair to say it has taken a year or 1.5 course. Yeah, we did several things in parallel, yeah, and yeah, it was a quite good enabler to start. Afterwards, you have to bring all documentation, the whole network within, and do all this mapping. So the question is, what's the slot you say it's the slot for implementing it?
And is there someone is asking an interesting and challenging question? Is there one thing you would have done differently based on your experience of implementing this this software? Is there a piece of advice or one thing that you would recommend or you would have hoped to do differently, or was everything totally fluid and perfect from the start?
Tough question. Maybe it's not, the answer is not based on reworking, let's say, the system landscape, but what I would say every growing company is facing when it's getting big, it's switching from manual to automation. So that is a big enabler to spend the brains what are clicking stuff together in the past to really high value points in the process chain and win that time through automate everything else. So that would be an approach. Maybe it makes sense to think about it earlier, even for small companies, because that's growing a lot, and the possibilities and AI and stuff like that is also growing a lot. So from my perspective, this transfer is one of a big thing we maybe could do earlier.
And maybe one last question, because we are getting close to the conclusion. Do you track the difference between cost estimation coming from the system and actual cost you experience once you develop your project? And can you share some delta between the two?
Christian, I could also, but you are laughing, so please.
Yeah, We are tracking it. Yeah, we are piloting with some general contractors to have it used on the way we want to use it. Yeah, and we are there in a learning curve. It's not a big one. Yeah, because it's a completely change. You can't compare apples and bananas. The old one was more or less like having a big contract. Yeah, without having the detailed quantities and the detailed materials. Yeah. Like today, we have the whole HLD and low-level design as well in our house, yeah, and we are in the piloting to have it rolled out, to have it deployed, and to have it purchased.
And maybe as an addition, what is really hitting hard today is the development of the market. So when you have thoughts a year ago, it would possibly, I don't know, just to say a number, 10% cheaper from a price perspective to roll something out. But the rollout gains a lot of speed. So of course, prices and inflation and stuff also occurs. So we think about having a feedback loop to establish, to really say, hey guys, the learnings we get out of the field and the obstacles we faced, let's try to also take a look into that maybe in the HLD phase. So it doesn't make sense for everything, but for everything what has a high impact on price, for example, can help to really take the balance of what you have calculated and what you really paid in the end.
Yeah. Well, we passed the top of the hour, so I think what I would like is really to give a few seconds to each of our speaker for a conclusion. I would like to thank our audience also for your active participation via the multiple questions we are receiving, so we are clearly not able to address all of them. Anthony, maybe a few words, and then Christian and Jakob for the wrap-up.
Yes, thank you, Vincent. Yeah, I would like to thank my co-presenters today. In very quick words, I go back to our vision of building better networks. This is what we try to enable our customers and clients to do with the portfolio that we're offering them, that we're constantly and dynamically innovating along the way. And with that, I pass it to Jakob.
I know, I already work with Anthony, and it's always a pleasure gaining speed through IQGeo. That is really helpful in the amount of rollout we face. So everything what helps us gaining speed is a warm welcome. And I'm really thankful also for inviting me to give a bit of an insight. And yeah, I hope it was helpful for everyone. Christian.
Yeah, many thanks to the FTTH Council and IQGeo for the great collaboration. From me, some words in direction of IQGeo and to Jakob as well. To have this kind of software gives us as passive network architects a really great base to check all the ideas we have, to evaluate it, and to be as Deutsche Glasfaser the innovative driver in the Germany broadband market. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. I will pass on unanswered question to Anthony so that we can follow up. Recording, replay, PDF version of the deck will be shared with all participants, live and registered delegates. So thanks again for attending this webinar. Stay tuned, more session to come in the weeks and months ahead of us. So thank you again for your participation, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.